right, for our next technique, we're going to do a glittered and colored background. So we're going to color the glitter with some alcohol markers. When this technique first came out, I was told that you could do it with water-based markers as well, but I have tried it. And because the glitter is a synthetic backing, the glitter doesn't, or the ink from the markers doesn't dry unless it is alcohol-based markers. So this piece here is just some cardstock with that same double tape that I used last time for the last technique, but this time I've got it on top of a piece of cardstock because we only need this side and it's to get the glitter to stick. So I'm lining up my die cut with the edge of this cardstock. I'm going to use my backing from last time, and I'm just taking my backing off a bit at a time, and then I'm holding it down with the other backing. If you were to take the backing off the whole piece and then try to line it up, A, chances are you would be touching it with your fingers, and B, the other thing is you would probably have a hard time getting it flat. So by doing it the way I just did it, you have an easier time. I happen to have a piece of the die cut still in there that I didn't notice until afterwards here. So once it's on there, you want to make sure to press that die cut down so that it is good and stuck. And now I'm taking some clear ultrafine glitter and I'm going to pour it over the whole thing. The finer the glitter, the better, in my opinion. It just looks prettier with this technique. You could absolutely use chunkier glitter, but I prefer as fine as possible. This one here is a microfine one that I love. After you've got the glitter down, take your backing and you're going to rub it on your glitter. You could also use wax paper if you happen to have thrown the backing out, but I always keep my backings. I even keep an excess of backings just for this reason. By rubbing it, you're burnishing it. Basically, you're giving that glitter some really good contact with the backing, with the tape, and then you're going to have less falling off. As we do the coloring on the glitter, you will have some glitter come up onto your marker. I'm just going to grab that scrap piece of paper. But as that happens, what you're going to do is just clean your brush onto a scrap piece of paper. So I'm going to use my marker. This is just a Copic marker. I'm sure any alcohol-based marker would work. I only have Copic, so that is what I'm using. So I'm using the color, and then I'm using the colorless blender to dilute the color and blend the color towards the center. So you see that I used my marker just to color around the outside edges, and then the blender pen, I'm using that to blend it towards the center. So basically where I'm putting the marker is behind the flowers or buds, and then around the outside of the frame. And I usually do a couple sections at a time. Now for this technique, you'll notice that my outline is black. It has to be black because I'm using my marker around the edges, so some of it is actually going onto the black cardstock, but you don't notice it because it's black and because the markers are transparent. If you were to use, say, a white outline, it wouldn't work the same because you would see the marker. What you could do if you wanted to use a white outline is you could do this technique, say, with black, and then, say, put a white overlay over top of it. You probably still see the edges of the black, but if you really wanted to have a white outline, that's how I would do it. The technique is really quite simple, but I think it's just a little bit more effective and a little bit more interesting looking than, say, solid colored glitter. I always like when there's a little bit of lights and darks. To me, it's more interesting to look at. So this one here, just because there's a larger edge, I'm just going to kind of feather the marker out just to get a wider area. And get a little bit more of that color in there. And the nice thing about coloring glitter with alcohol markers is it's not a one-shot deal. so say this, well, let me finish the one I'm doing right now. So if that section beside the one I'm doing right now, if I thought, you know what, I want more color in it, I can absolutely go back and add some more color in it where I want it to be, and then blend it out. Like I said, you're going to get color, or you're going to get glitter on your markers. That's just going to happen. Just roll them on a scrap piece of paper to clean them off. Copic tips are really high quality, so I have never had glitter doing this technique on glitter ruin a marker tip. If by chance you have a marker tip ever that gets ruined, not through this technique, through other techniques, or goes hard or whatever, you can buy new tips. So it's nice that if by chance for some reason you have a marker that goes weird, or you have a tip that gets funny, you just buy new tips and install them or replace them. And the other thing with Copics is they're refillable. So when you run out of ink, you just get them refilled rather than throw a whole marker out. They're definitely an investment to start, but they're one of my favorite ways of coloring. And you can see I'm doing a couple sections at a time. You absolutely can do that. The one thing that I wouldn't necessarily do though is say do all of the coloring, or say all of the red or coral color and then blend it out, just because sometimes I find that the ink kind of sinks to the cardstock and it's a little bit harder to blend out. So I like to do a few at a time and then blend it out while that ink is, I mean, most of the time it's dry, but just slightly damp. I find it's a little bit easier to blend it that way. So this one here, I'm going to do some of the dark by the base of the petal, which is what I've been doing all along, and then some behind where it goes behind another flower. So when I'm coloring flowers, typically I'll do dark at the base of the petal, and then there's usually a shadow where a petal goes behind another. So that's where I'm choosing to put the dark color here. You could get creative and say do this corally color in the base and then say yellow or something around the tip and blend those two together. That would absolutely work as well. I was trying to keep the color, or the colors for the cards for this class in similar color tones so that all the cards would look pretty together. There we go. And once again, if there's something that you want a little bit darker, you can easily go back and just add some ink to it. And there we go. Make sure with your blender pen, because it does pick up some of that color, and I did it with my blue, but there wasn't much on the end of the tip. Anytime I'm done, I scribble it onto some scrap paper until it runs completely clear, so that I know next time I go to use it, I'm not going to have contamination. Sometimes you will get a little bit of staining on the tip, but as long as it runs clear when you're doing this, you're good to go. So there we go. I will see you in the next video and we will put the card together.